Welcome to this presentation on the Regional District of Central Kootenay's Draft Resource Recovery Plan. Less is more, services and solutions for reducing waste. In BC, under the Environmental Management Act, every regional district has to produce a solid waste management plan called a Resource Recovery Plan in the RDCK. This plan is a long-term vision of the regional solid waste management system. It considers the 10-year financial and administrative implications of the plan, and it adopts the pollution prevention hierarchy: reduce, reuse, recycle, recovery, and residuals management for the garbage that goes to landfill. The RDCK engaged Maura Walker and Associates, my colleague Maura Walker, and myself, Carrie McIver, to work with resource recovery staff, the Resource Recovery Plan Advisory Committee, and the Joint Resource Recovery Committee to update this plan. The process to update the plan was conducted in 3 phases. Phase 1, starting in 2017, consisted of establishing the RRP Advisory Committee, the RPAC, assessing the existing system, undertaking a community survey, and preparing an RRP webpage. In Phase 2, undertaken between 2018 and 2021, considered options for the future: waste diversion, residual waste management, policy and regulations, and financing, and established the tools for community access and input that we are using right now in Phase 3, where we are obtaining community feedback and local government feedback on preferred options. Once this feedback is assessed, considered, the plan will be revised as necessary, submitted to the board for approval. Upon approval by the board, it will be submitted to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy for final approval. So in the RDCK, the resource recovery system consists of 3 distinct subregions or service areas: the West subregion, of which you're part of, the Central subregion, and the East subregion. And taken together in these 3 subregions, there are 3 active landfills, 13 waste transfer stations, 23 recycling depots, and 2 composting facilities that will be constructed this summer. Now, the trend in operating and capital expenses over the last 5 years has been that both operating and capital are increasing. Operating increasing, capital increasing to provide new services, such as recycling depots, or to meet new regulatory requirements for landfills, as dictated in the landfill criteria for municipal solid waste. Taking a snapshot of the costs in 2021, this graph shows in the blue the operating expenses for each subregion and total, as well as the capital expenses in orange for each subregion in total. There's a lot of capital going on this year, not as much in the West, but a lot in the Central and the East with the construction of the composting facilities. The important thing to look at is, we know though capital can vary from year to year, but operating is relatively consistent, and the operating budget in 2021 is coming close to $12 million a year. So those costs are recovered through a different formula for each of the subregions. In the West subregion, which has to recover $4.5 million of costs in 2021, it is through taxation, tipping fees, and reserves and other. For the Central subregion, with a bigger capital, there is taxation, tipping fees, but also grants for the compost facilities, borrowing, and reserves that have been built up to pay for capital projects. Similarly, in the East subregion. The staffing requirements for the resource recovery system are significant. There are 7 managerial, technical, or supervisory positions and 83 operating positions. In 2020, the system disposed of 31,097 tons of municipal solid waste, which equates to a disposal rate of 490 kilograms per capita. The pie chart on the right shows that based on waste composition studies, what went into landfill, still 37% was recyclable and 40% was compostable. And the largest component of going to landfill right now is still food waste at 26%. So to take a look at RDCK performance against other regional districts, In BC, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change requires each regional district to report their disposal rate every year. This is the most recent reporting, 2018. The provincial average disposal rate, all the regional districts taken together, was 505 kilograms per capita, and the RDCK performed under that average at 469 in 2018. We were higher in 2020. The provinces set a long-term carbon target of 350 kilograms per capita as the provincial average. And as you can see, there are regional districts that are already approaching that. And so really the RDCK could do better. And those regional districts that are doing better than the RDCK are addressing organics diversion. So what are the key issues in this plan update? First of all, as I said earlier, food waste is the largest component of the waste stream at 26%. Only 42% of households have curbside collection. The recycling depot system is not well funded by Recycle BC. Resource recovery system is complex and expensive with many moving parts, and cost recovery needs to be fair and equitable while incentivizing diversion. So what are the strategies and actions identified in this plan update? There are three main strategies: zero waste, reducing what we send to landfill; residual waste, securing landfill capacity for the long term and meeting regulatory requirements to protect the environment; financial and administrative, supporting the actions in the plan. So the path to zero waste, the first strategy, has a series of actions. The first action is events and campaigns that encourage waste reduction and reuse. The first two R's. There will be $5,000 of new operating associated with these actions and new staffing of 0.3 FTE. The second set of actions relates to organic waste diversion to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and save landfill capacity. There's new capital there to build the two new composting facilities of $6.3 million and new operating to run those facilities of $528,500 per year with 3 new permanent full-time employees and 2 term employees. The third set of actions is to increase participation in recycling by residents with no new costs. Now, with respect to organic diversion, the plan aims to optimize organic diversion by expanding curbside collection. Now, why is this important? Well, when organics decompose in a landfill, which is under anaerobic or no oxygen conditions, organics create methane. And methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. It is 21 times stronger than carbon dioxide. So if you're wanting to really reduce greenhouse gas emissions and address the climate crisis, one of the easiest things that local governments can do is to divert organics from landfill. Now, the RDCK has been working towards this since 2017. There'll be a composting facility constructed in Creston in 2021, a composting facility near Salmo at the Close Central Landfill in 2021 as well, and curbside collection in Creston, Nelson, and Castlegar in 2022. But as I said earlier, less than 50% of households in the RDCK get curbside collection. And curbside collection has the highest recovery rate of organics than, for example, drop-off or backyard composting. So if the regional district wants to optimize organic diversion, we need to look at expanding curbside collection. And we were engaged to look at this last year to see, is it feasible? And this map shows that it is feasible to start providing collection to those households outside of the municipal boundaries that create just as much organics that are within proper distance to transfer facilities or compost facilities. And if the curbside program is expanded to outside of the local government municipal boundaries, this will improve convenience, reduce costs, increase diversion, reduce the environmental footprint, and ease pressure on the landfill. The fourth set of actions is to encourage our businesses and institutions to maximize their participation in recycling and waste reduction. There are no new costs associated with these actions. The fifth is to encourage and support the diversion and highest end use of construction, demolition, and renovation waste. There are new operating costs of $5,000 per year and some new staffing. The sixth is to encourage broad availability of extended producer responsibility programs in the RDCK and support expansion of EPR programs. There are no new costs associated with these actions. The seventh is to support the establishment of a circular economy with no new costs. And the eighth is to continue education and outreach activities, but to increase them. There's some new operating of $10,000 a year and new staffing at 0.2 of an FTE. With respect to residual waste and landfills, in the East subregion, there's the Creston landfill. In the Central subregion, there is not a landfill because that waste is transferred to the West subregion, to the Utashenia landfill, rather than having a landfill in the Central region. But there are historic landfills. So what's really important for the West subregion is that the Nakusp landfill, to reduce costs, will be closed in a few years and be replaced with a transfer station. But the Utashenia landfill will become the landfill for both the West and the Central. And to optimize the use of the site with minimal change to final appearance, there was an optimization study with a new design that will double the lifespan and lower the cost per cubic meter of landfill space. There's also an issue of historic landfills that need additional closure to ensure long-term protection of the environment. And these sites will be assessed in the next few years, then will be closed. So the estimated cost for the West subregion landfills and transfer stations, and this is a table in the plan, capital costs relate to the Nakusp landfill closure works at about $1 million in 2024, Roseberry transfer station upgrades, Slocan transfer station upgrades, the Nakusp transfer station construction, and the major expense, the Utashenia landfill expansion, as well as the costs of the proposed legacy landfill closures in Burton, Edgewood, Roseberry, and Slocan. And they have been estimated $1 million each, but really won't know until the assessments have been completed. Another aspect of the residual waste strategy is hazardous materials assessments for demolition and renovation projects. Now that there's a greater awareness of the potential for exposure to hazardous materials such as asbestos from demolition and renovation projects, the plan recommends that to ensure safety, a hazardous materials assessment be required prior to disposal of demolition and renovation waste at RDCK facilities. Another component is to work with the community to reduce illegal dumping by lobbying the province to improve their activities regarding reporting and compliance enforcement, to develop a regional interagency illegal dumping strategy, to look at ongoing cleanup of problem sites, to support community-based initiatives, and to establish a reporting mechanism. And the cost for this across all three subregions is about $1,000 a year with some new staffing. The financial and administrative implications of the new plan are presented here. For the West subregion, this chart shows a 10-year financial plan. Local governments in BC have to adopt 5-year financial plans. RDCK staff have taken the approved 5-year plan and taken it out for 10 years with the approved revenue and the anticipated capital expenditures. So the chart shows in the blue estimated expenditures, including the new projects in the RRP, and in the orange is the current revenue as approved in the 5-year financial plans. So the importance of doing this is to identify where there are any gaps between the expenditures and the revenue. And there are gaps, and the major gaps are really related to capital. But capital projects can be funded through the reserves that have been built up through the years, through borrowing, or through grant funding. So the capital gaps from capital are not as important as gaps from operating increases, because those gaps in operating increases have to be looked at or dealt with through an increase in tipping fees, taxes, or a reduction in costs. And the table to the right of this slide shows the operating increase for the West subregion over 10 years, and it is significant. From 0.6% in 2021, rising up to 9.9% in 2025 and 12.2% in 2030. So there will need to be some decisions made by the West Subregion Resource Recovery Facility regarding increases to taxes and tipping fees or finding cost efficiencies. This same exercise has been completed for the Central Subregion, which has not a significant cost for the first 7 years, but then we'll have to look at funding cost increases for the final 3 years, similarly for the East Subregion. So the third strategy relates to financial sustainability and looks at considering an alternative administrative model for the resource recovery system, undertaking a system efficiency study and identifying options to improve cost effectiveness and equitability, reviewing the subsidization of waste diversion services at resource recovery facilities, and implementing asset management plans at resource recovery facilities. So all of these strategies and actions result in a new disposal target of reducing waste disposal by 28%. The new goal is to reduce disposal from 490 kilograms per person a year in 2020 to 360 kilograms per person per year in 2030. And this will be achieved through reduction and reuse, organic waste diversion, residential recycling, institutional, commercial, and industrial EPR and household hazardous waste diversion, construction, demolition, renovation diversion, and support for a circular economy. Thank you for listening to the presentation. If you have any questions, you can ask staff when they present to you at your meeting. Thank you.